Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Thanks for um, being here with all of us, and welcome all of those who will be watching us in the future as well through the Mend. And getting some feedback here. 1 second, please. All right. Sorry about that. And as we were saying, welcome all of those who will be watching us in the future. And we ask that you connect with us in every way possible. Since tonight we have a special guest. But before we pass the word to Flavio Zanetti, we would like to read a passage of the book Happy Life, as well as pray together so we can connect with the higher minds and prepare the soil for this amazing talk that we'll have tonight. Always rely on divine assistance. When you feel yourself besieged, without any chance of release, help will arrive from God. Never doubt the fatherhood of God. God looks after you and helps you, not always as you might like, but in the best way possible for your real happiness. At times, you have the impression that divine help will not come or will arrive too late. After the crucial moment, if you have persevered in waiting for it, you will find that help came a few moments before. Again, this is a passage from the book Happy Life. To be precise, this is actually chapter 13 of the book. This way, we would like to invite everyone to connect with us so we can pray together. Dear Master Jesus, Father, Mother God, we ask you that you guide us tonight. Bless our hearts, our minds. Connect us all in this unifying message that we are about to receive. We ask that you guide us so that we can connect through this message with other minds and pave the way for a new tomorrow, for a new beginning in our lives. And since we're here exploring this moment of joy, encouragement, we would like to give thanks and share our gratitude with one another by praying for all of those who may be in need, those who are going through troubled times, as we all are in this moment. But we can always share a little bit of ourselves, send our good vibrations and energies to those who may not have a moment like this. We ask that you guide us, guide our dear friend Flavio Zanetti, who will also be leading us tonight in this amazing endeavor. And may we all receive your enlightenment, your guidance, as always, and so be it. So, dear friend, as we were saying, as every special night that we have here tonight, a very special one, having again another collaborator from another state, from other areas of the US, who also works hard to be a better human being, be a better spirit, a spiritist as well. We have no other than Flavio Zanetti here with us. We would like to thank you, Flavio, for spending some time here with us tonight. But before I pass the word to you, I always like to say to everyone that he is a family man with two beautiful daughters, his wife as well. We thank them for allowing us to have you here. And Flavio Zanetti has worked in the board of directors of the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts in different positions. He acted as the program's director for the United States Spiritist Council, and more recently helped found the Spiritist Institute, a nonprofit dedicated to disseminate Spiritism in English. He also contributes as a translator of printed Spiritist materials and with simultaneous translation for Spiritist events nationwide. Professionally, he is an engineer manager working for a multinational telecommunication company. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering a Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology, and a Master's degree in International Management and Business Operations. And tonight, this afternoon into this evening, Flavio Zanetti will be speaking about Spiritism, a message of liberation. With no further ado, we would like to pass the word to Flavio. Flavio, welcome again, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Leo, for the warm introduction. It's truly a joy to spend a few minutes with all of you guys from Baltimore again. My heart, always is filled with joy when we do that. So, in advance, we'd like to thank you all for the invitation, and also would like to keep our thoughts, raised towards, our professor, our Jesus, our brother, our dearest sibling. May he and his emissaries, his benefactor spirits, enlighten our minds, really bring our hearts at peace, so that we can really conduct the short talk with all of the dedication, with all of the commitment with which we put into preparing that for you guys. So good afternoon, everybody that's watching us live. Good evening or good morning for those of you who are watching us recorded afterwards. Once again, it's truly a joy to spend a few minutes with you. Leo, I hope you can hear me okay. If not, just do something, right? I think everything is working fine from the technological perspective, which is good. All right, so our topic tonight, or this afternoon into tonight, is Spiritism, a message of liberation, right? So what are we doing here? I mean, what's the overall goal of the next 55, 57 minutes, right? So first, we'd like to define what Spiritism is and why it is not. What is the message that it portrays in order to really bring liberation to our lives? And beyond the freeing of rituals, dogmas, and ceremonies with which we don't have any Spiritist, ideals, or Spiritism per se does not call for any ceremonies, any specific dogmas or rituals or anything like that, but instead it really shows us ideas that can really help us see the world with a different set of eyes. They can give us the ammunition or the toolbox in order for us to be more connected with the real life that we all have, which is our spiritual life. It's really understanding and changing the concept that before, right, in the eyes of confinement and exclusivity that some other religious folks portrayed in the past, but instead, as we'll see throughout history, a message of love, a message of inclusion, a message of welcoming in every aspect of the way. That's in a nutshell the message of liberation that Spiritism really, portrays for all of us today. And as I mentioned, right, it's more actual than ever. It's more relevant these days than ever, because when we turn on our televisions, when we look, into our communities, when we look into the news, we live in a very splitted world as we know it. People, all of us, long for liberation in many, many aspects. Liberation from our dependencies, liberation from our difficulties, liberation from understanding what happens when we pass, when we die, physically speaking, because spirits never die, as we know. Liberation from cycles of violence that we sometimes infuse, into our own selves or into others. These are some of the things that Spiritism comes with a very prepared set of tools and really data points for us to really open our minds. So that's the goal for tonight. Let's get started, folks. So first things first, okay, let's define what Spiritism is, so that folks that may not know it, if you are here for the first time, you get to learn what Spiritism is. And for those of us who have been here for maybe a couple of walks around the block, may use it as a refresh. Anyways, so when we look at Spiritism, this is the definition that I like to give. A progressive body of knowledge that deals with the nature, origin, and destiny of spirits and their relation with the corporeal world. As we learn here, Spiritism is not a specific religion per se. It's not a science per se. It's not only a philosophy per se, but it's the combination of all these together or combined, or the combination combined, or those three combined into this progressive body of knowledge. And why do I say progressive body of knowledge? Because, of course, Allan Kardec, whose picture you see here in the slide, is the codifier of Spiritism. He collected thousands and thousands of messages from mediums all over the world, in different places of the world, in several languages. And these communications through different mediums, he was able to really corroborate themselves once against each other and really extirp the content, I should say, of these communications, and then really put together what we know today, by Spiritism. But as we like to say as well, it started with Kardec. It did not end with Kardec. And why do we say this? Because it's progressive. It keeps learning, keeps moving. It's dynamic with new authors, with new contributors, with new researchers. We continue to develop Spiritism, as we know, over and over and over. Not necessarily to contradict what Allan Kardec said, but more so to expand on the literature, on the knowledge, on the teachings that he actually left for us. And that's exactly why we categorize it as this progressive body of knowledge. So if you think of a body of knowledge, it keeps growing, keeps moving, keeps going towards where the future is. That's why it's progressive. That's why it's going towards the future. So what does it do? It deals with the nature, meaning where have we come from? What are we doing here? What are we made of? Right? What are we going to go next? What happens when we die? Ourselves, spirits, all of us are spirits, and the relation with our corporeal world. In this time, in this situation, in this circumstance, I'm an incarnate being. Some of our family members, some of my loved ones have already passed. They're discarnates right now. I'd like to believe, and I have some evidence that they're looking after me. They're looking after us. Yes, your loved ones may be right now looking after you. So that tells us that we're never alone. That tells us that we're never here away from our loved ones. Love is this sentiment, is this energy that really connects human beings and spirits much beyond just our physical bodies, as we learned from Spiritism. But anyways, let's keep going, because our time here is of essence. So what is the perspective of God for Spiritism? Perhaps I should start with the question, why is it important to study about God? Because every religion, many philosophies, a lot of ideologies out there talk about God, or more so, talk about God as a creator, talk about God as a father. You may have heard Leo said in his initial prayer, Father and Mother God. Why did he say that? I'm not sure if folks caught that when he said a prayer, initial prayer. Why is it a mother and a father? So today, as we learn the concept of God through Spiritism, we'll see that it's a slightly different concept than the one that we're used to from learning from previous religions and philosophies and whatnot, which is an idea of this anthropomorphic. Oh, that's a difficult word. Anthropos, right? Human beings. Morphic, form. So this form of God that is human. We learn from Spiritism that in reality, God is not human. God is the supreme intelligence of the universe, the first cause of all things. Meaning, the supreme intelligence. Supreme, there's no one, beyond that. It's the supreme intelligence. Excuse me, and first cause of all things. Because if anybody else, anything else has, been there before, that anything or anybody else would have been God as we know it. This question is so important, which is the number one from the Spirit's book. And more important than the answer itself is how Allan Kardec asked the question. will normally ask questions like, hey, where is God? Who is God? Correct? Allan Kardec asked in a very different subtle way. He asked, what is God? Because the moment we say who is God, we're putting God in a category of human, of a person. Who is Flavio? Who is Leo? Who is Daniel? Who is so and so? But Allan Kardec, so wise and brilliant the way he did, codifying or really capturing the message, he asked that, what is God instead? And here, ladies and gentlemen, we have our very first message of liberation, or very first liberation, which is the concept of God that has been taught to us by many different schools of thought, schools of religion, are telling us, or is telling us that right, we cannot understand God as human because he's much more than human. He's not like us. And by not being like us, how do we describe God? There's a lot of different ways we can try to understand God, but ultimately what we learn from Spiritism is that we're never going to be able to understand or comprehend God's essence. We can only have a glimpse of what God is based on some of his attributes. And for those folks that are really dying to know more about it, that's in the first passage, the first not chapter, the first book of the Spirit's book. The first, I forgot the word in English. Anyway, so the first compound of the Spirit's book. So, this concept, I'm sure you can agree with me here, that is much more in line with what we learn from science these days. For example, from Einstein to Spinoza, God is much more than just an old man with a cane, sitting in a throne, like white, a beard and all that, worrying about the fate of us humans. He's much more than that, right? To the point that even Einstein used to say that he believed in Spinoza's concept, which really was the first philosopher to reveal God and really understand God in a way that brings harmony to everything that exists. Not, however, a God that's concerned about, hey, is Flavio going to get a promotion tomorrow? Is Leo going to get, so and so, or is so and so is going to, get rid of that? No, I mean that's our lives. We deal with those things. That's for us to work on. But ultimately, God is overseeing everything, overseeing our actions, but not really concerned about these, so much so that interferes with our own free will. As we learn from Spiritism, all of us have free will and really able to really conduct our lives based on the toolbox, as I mentioned before, that we all have already, which is in our conscience. We all learn that. So, moving forward, when we look at the second concept that's somewhat different from other philosophies or religions out there is the idea of Jesus. So, when we open up Amazon.com and we search for biographies, the most biographies ever written were or are about him. When you look at Jesus, his life divided how we count our calendars today, before Christ and after Christ. Even nature responded to him. What's so special about Jesus? 2 billion plus followers all over the world. There are many, so let's make an analogy so we can really comprehend what the message I'm trying to build here. There are many famous people in the world, correct? Let's pick, somebody that you really have as a as a famous person, or somebody that you follow on one of your social media channels. Some are even well known within our own communities, within our own cities, our own countries. I get that. Others are even known worldwide. Okay? All good for now? All right. So, however, just knowing about the names of these individuals does not mean that we truly know them. Correct? So, how much do we know about Jesus? How much do we know about his life? How much do we know about the teachings that he left for us? People all over the world have heard something about Jesus or about Christ, right? Some people call him different ways. Even though he lived with us, as I mentioned, 2,000 years ago, many are still confused about who he really was. Was Jesus a normal person? Was he a god? Was he a prophet? Was he somebody else than a prophet? Some people believe that Jesus was God. And should we worship Jesus as we worship God? What should we do? How should we deal with the concept or with Jesus himself? So let's rely on Spiritism to really help us there. So as we learn from Spiritism, Jesus is the most perfect model and guide that God has offered to humanity. So when we look at Jesus, we should not look at him as a god. No, he was a human being. He is a human. He's a spirit now, but he was a human being when he was incarnated. Of course, a spirit incarnated, like we all are. So we should look at Jesus as this, our dearest sibling. We should look at Jesus as someone that all of us will be able to reach the same level. All of us will be able to reach the same level. Oh my God, that's profanity. That's what is Flavio saying? So Flavio, are you saying that all of us, doesn't matter who, from A to Z, from a priest to a somebody that was in jail? Yes, I meant everyone. Every single one of us will reach to the same level as Jesus is, because he is as human, or as a spirit, I should say, as we all are. He's not God, but he had direct connection with God when he was here. We get that. And he should be seen as the perfect model and guide. I used to say when I was doing, talks in person, of course, long these days, I used to use an analogy that Jesus is my compass, meaning I should look at Jesus as I look at my compass. And then sometime one person raised, hey, Flavio, I think, nobody uses compass anymore. Maybe you should change the way you say this. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right, though. I should use GPS. So we should look at Jesus as our GPS, correct? I mean, when we go to a destination, we go to our cars or to our phones, we just input an address, and the GPS gets us there. So we should look at Jesus as that guidance for us, as that one that provides guidance. But this is the important concept. He's not going to drive our cars. We're still going to drive our cars ourselves. He's going to give us where the places, turn left, turn right. So same thing as the GPS does. But we are still ultimately responsible to arriving at the destination as safely, as fast, and as accurately as possible. Correct? So he should be a model, but he should not do the work for us. So what am I trying to say with this? People oftentimes mistake Jesus as the savior, as the one that's going to really save me from all my difficulties, from all my sins, from all my problems, Is he going to? As we learn from Spiritism, no. Because the concept that we learn from Jesus is he was as human as we are, he's as spirit as we are, but we are ultimately responsible for our lives. We are the ones that are building upon what we've gotten already so far. That's the second message that I think it's important for us to keep in mind. Jesus as a human being, as a spirit, like we all are. That's the key difference. All right, so moving on. One comment that Kardec left in one of the chapters of the Gospel according to Spiritism is a very poignant one. Kardec says, quote, without charity, there's no salvation. Look at the dichotomy here. Because a lot of people look for salvation in Jesus. A lot of people look, hey, the moment I call myself Christian, that's it, I'm done. And we respect those people. We respect those beliefs. Everybody has beliefs. We know that. We respect them. But we learn through Spiritism something a little different. Meaning, without charity, it doesn't matter. We can call ourselves whatever we want to call ourselves. I mean, for the fact of many don't even know who Jesus was. But if we live a life filled with charity, if we live a life filled with serving others, filled with doing, really being there for others, like Jesus did when he healed the sick, when he really raised his hands to give passes to those who needed, healing or cure. He was there to console, to assist, to talk, to guide, to mentor, to coach everyone. This is what we should see Jesus as a modeling guide. But we're still ultimately accountable to do our own jobs, to continue with our own lives. And as Kardec highlights in this quote, without charity, there's no salvation. And to me, this is one of the most important phrases that Kardec made a comment, because Kardec was really, in my opinion, was really inspired when he wrote this in the gospel. And I'll tell you why I believe that. Because had he said something along the lines of, without, Christianity, there'll be no salvation. As I mentioned before, only 2 billion people know about Jesus today. What about this other 5 billion? That means they're gone? I mean, there's no, and they're not going to continue. I mean, there's no salvation for them. What about those that don't believe in Jesus? What about those that don't even believe in God? So Kardec was very connected when he said that, because charity is universal. Hang on, Flavio, are you telling me that even if I'm an atheist, but I'm a charitable, I'm a good human being, does that mean? Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's what we learn from Spiritism. That's not Flavio's opinion. That's what we learn through Spiritism, that without charity, there's no salvation. It doesn't matter what we call ourselves. Labels, we couldn't care less. Okay? What matters is how much charity are we doing? How much are we raising our hands to those who are in need? Oh, Flavio, but I don't like to give money to the... Okay, but when somebody stops at a traffic light asking for money or food or whatever, what do? Usually, do we say, good morning, my brother, go with God, or go in peace? Do we give him some, change, some money, some food, whatever it is? What do? Are we following Jesus' teachings? Are we following him as a model and guide that assisted everyone that he could? Oh, Flavio, but I'm afraid he's going to mug me or something. I get that. But what about with the window still closed? Okay? We still smile. We still do something that shows our heart is filled with charity. Sometimes our fears overcome our possibility to be charitable in a way that we'll do even more. But every one of us, I should say, has the ability to look at that situation with a different set of eyes. How would Jesus do or perform if he was here in my shoes right now? That's the question, folks, that we should be asking every step of the way. And that's another message of liberation that I would say, that charity is the vehicle, not religion, not this, not that. For example, even if Kardec had said, without the truth, there's no salvation. But what truth? Who knows what the truth is? I mean, is my truth the same as your truth? The way I see the world is the same way as you see the world? Might not be. We don't know. But bottom line is, charity as Jesus did. Charity as Jesus himself performed every step of the way. When you look at Jesus and how much charity he practiced, it should really serve, folks, as an inspiration for all of us. For example, he cured the sick, he healed the conflicted, he spent time and assisted those who were on the verge of society. Remember that? Those with the Hansen disease, and those, the prostitute. He was there where nobody else was. He treated every woman with respect, which was a total news for when he was with us. Judaism back then saw women as a third-class citizen, as we know it. Women that are following us today or right now, if you think that your life is difficult right now, you would have been much worse back in Jesus' time. So he was the true egalitarian, as we know it. He challenged the status quo every step of the way. always helping, always serving. This is the Jesus, folks, that we should pay attention to. The very same Jesus that Spiritism asks us to be based or to be used as a modeling guide for our own lives. Oh, does that mean that Spiritism is Christian? So I know the word Christian has many different meanings. So that means that we Spiritists follow Jesus' teachings. Yes, we do. But there's slight different interpretation of those, nevertheless, as we learn, right? As we're mentioning here. For example, when we look as this very interesting one that he left us with, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. You should love your neighbor as yourself. So as Jesus didn't come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it and to demonstrate with his own examples and words of wisdom in the form of parables. We're still learning from those parables, folks. As every time we read them, we take a little different nuance, different, a little more enhanced interpretation of those. And we're still developing that. Remember what I defined Spiritism as this progressive body of knowledge? We'll continue to develop our own interpretation of those teachings. The same way that Jesus did not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it, Spiritism did not come to change everything Christ said, but on the contrary, to put more color to those things that he did. And by the way, some of the things that he said, we were not ready back then to learn them or to hear them. That's why we need to thank Spiritism that really is able to open our hearts and minds for that perspective. For example, let me bring an interesting author that continued the work of Allan Kardec. The Frenchman Léon Denis, who continued the work of Allan Kardec, his contributions to Spiritism were almost as equal as from Kardec himself, as said in the Spirit Review or the Spirits magazine from back in the days. And he writes something very interesting. If you're a woman, you may say, well, this is not news. I mean, this is 2020. Yeah, but this book, folks, was written in 1910. So more than 110 years ago. The role of women is immense in life. Sister, wife, or mother, she's a great comforter and a loving counselor. For the son is his future while she prepares the future human beings. So when we learn something like this, it's like, okay, yeah, that's okay. I mean, yeah, we can understand that. But let's put ourselves in 1910 shoes. Where were we in 1910? From a women's movement's perspective, not very far. Women still did not vote in most countries. Women were still seen as a property of somebody. Women were still seen as should stay home, cook, clean, do all those things. But Léon Denis said, no. We gotta go beyond that. He continues. Look at the interesting definition that he continues. Therefore, societies that depress them, women, depress themselves. The respected woman, honored, with enlightened understanding, is what makes the family strong and a great, morally inclined and united society. When you look at this, folks, it's Léon Denis speaking ahead of his time. Is Léon Denis, or Spiritism per se, seeing the true role of women, the true role of us at the forefront of the equal rights movement? Because we have to. Remember, spirits don't have sex. We decide to incarnate in this body, as male or as a female, right? As in the uh, uh, biology of a male or in a biology of a female. We learned that. So again, the fourth liberation message that I have here is, yes, we have to really see ourselves as equal. There's no other way. All right, moving on. Some of you, if not most of you, or at least most of you, have heard about the Divine Comedy from Dante Alighieri. Some of you may even have read it, so to speak. So when you look at that, he depicts a very interesting place, right? Meaning a difficult place, or some people call it hell, or some people call it lower zones. It doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is some of his interpretations are pretty accurate as we learn from Spiritism. But questions still are there. Meaning, does hell really exist? Or is this place really real? I mean, are we all going to be there at one point? Or is there life after death? What happens in the afterlife? Am I going to still love the people that I love here? Am I going to still be connected with the people that are connected here? There's no Facebook as we know it. There's no Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok in the afterlife. There are different methods of communication that are much more advanced than those that we're used to knowing, or those that we know these days. Okay, how do we know that? Well, that's actually the fifth liberation message, because the fear of death, which normally is the fear of the unknown, we don't know what's going to happen after we die, so we're afraid of that. But thankfully, Andrew Lewis, the Spirit, has given us a lot of information. What is important to us? Because every minute, hundreds of people in all four corners of the world make the pilgrimage back to spiritual life. We know that. People they leave their physical bodies. So it happens that, this is an interesting piece here. It happens that we forget the quality, or we forget our qualities, right? When we embark on this journey, and sometimes we have a lot of baggage in this journey, and I'm sure you can. You can empathize with traveling with a lot of bags, a lot of luggage. It's difficult, correct? It's very troublesome. It makes our journey very difficult, painful, and all that. The Life in the Spiritual World collection, these 13 books by Andrew Lewis, if you go to your Spiritist center, almost guaranteed they're going to have them there for sale, or you can buy them on Amazon, or a fair publisher and whatnot. But the bottom line here is that Andrew Lewis invites us to reflect in this relationship between the spiritual world and the corporeal world. And he narrates a lot of different stories in those 13 books. People that are, here like us, make some mistakes, and after we pass, we wake up in the spiritual world, we repent those mistakes, we want to correct them. How do we do that? He even talks about the purpose of incarnation. What are we trying to do here? What should we be concerned about on this life? Why were we born in a specific family? We're going to see that in a minute as well. Why do we have the children, that entrusted us? Meaning, why does God entrust us with children? What's the role of a parent? These are some of the things that Andrew Lewis touches on in his books. And folks, if you have not read them, I highly, highly recommend. But ultimately, what that tells us is that the fear of dying, the fear of death, should no longer be there. Because guess what? Every one of us dies every day. When we go to sleep, that soul emancipation, we leave our physical bodies, still connected some sort, but we leave our physical bodies in a way that we can visit our loved ones. We can be removed from our normal day-to-day activities to really do other activities in the spiritual life. This is what Andrew Lewis talks about. We're not going to have time to go into more details, but here's our invitation for all of us to go back there. If you read him again a long time ago, read him again. If you read, there's a lot of information in those books, which brings us, again, to our fifth liberation message, which is we should not be afraid of death, by all means. All right, moving on. Um, this is an interesting quote that I love this passage for several reasons. I love this quote for several reasons because it's a great description of our lives, isn't it? Meaning we're pressed on every side by troubles, but we're not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We're hunted down, but never abandoned. I highlighted that by God. We get knocked out, but we're not destroyed. And this, folks, is life every single day, twice on Sunday sometimes. Meaning, life is difficult. Life is not going to be a walk in the park. Life is going to be difficult. It's going to be trouble. Yes, all these things combined. But the true message here that Paul left in his letter for the Corinthians is that God never abandons us. I mean, God as the shepherd, he's always there for us. And as we mentioned before from Dante in Divine Comedy, there's no eternal punishment. Meaning, we're not going to be in one place forever. I mean, that's not like a parent would like his or her kid to be. Correct? Parents, what do? If our children insert a metal device into a wall plug, what do we say? Honey, don't do that. You're gonna get some electric shock. Don't touch it. That's not for kids. If we see our children doing something that's dangerous for them, what do? We just call them, hey, don't do it. Please be careful. That's the same thing that God does for us through his spirits, through our guardian angel. That's why he never abandons his sheep, right? He never does that. He's always by our side. The challenge is we're not always listening to his message. Flavio, how do we listen to the message? Well, we listen to the message by praying is when you usually ask for something, or of course we praise God and we thank and we ask, but oftentimes we fail to listen to the response. And a great rule of thumb, I'll just share with you guys, if you meditate, that's through meditation. Meditation is when oftentimes we're able to listen to what God is trying to tell us. Try to do that. Kids, you can try this at home, I promise. Okay? Meaning, meditate. Try to understand your position in life, your duties, your role, your responsibilities. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you expect tomorrow, next month, next year, next 5 years? What are the things you're trying to do with your life? I mean, what are the things you're trying to do with the life of the ones that share their lives with you and all those things? So when we ask these questions in our prayers, and we stop all the activities from the exterior world to really listen to the response, they come. Their response comes. Here's my suggestion. So, with that being said, let's continue here, because oftentimes people believe, and I mentioned this before, that but Flavio, if there's no eternal punishment, if somebody does something bad for me, what's going to happen? And it's very simple. What's going to happen is there's accountability, meaning that individual he's going to be accountable for his or her own actions. And that's why for every action, there's an opposite reaction. Meaning every mistake that we made, everything that we did in the past, we're accountable for those. We are responsible for those. Because yes, we do have choices. I agree. We can turn left, we can turn right. As I mentioned before, Jesus is on a GPS, but we're still driving the car. We can take the highway, the freeway, or the back roads. We can take the long way or the shortest way. I mean, it's all up to us. But the whole idea of our choices, what happens after them? Meaning, if we're making good choices, good things should happen. If we're making bad choices or not so good choices, not so good things should happen. Flavio, what about the idea of fate? Some people believe that they're destined to be, sad or to do this and to do that. So some folks learn that or believe that Fate is a product of, for example, where they were born, color of their skin, their sex, their gender, and etc. So when we look at Spiritism, it can really help us decipher some of these things or some of these characteristics for us to really live well within society. For example, look at how interesting quote that it's in a Spirit's book. Fate only exists when applied to the choice made by spirits upon incarnating to undergo a specific trial. Not just by incarnating, but to undergo a specific trial. Let's build on the previous concept. Every action, there's a reaction. If in a previous life we did something not so great for a loved one, we betrayed somebody, we did this, we did that. Maybe in this life we are, we decide, or we are given the opportunity to have a situation or a condition that's going to help us atone or really correct those mistakes much more effectively, so to speak. So that is the fate that we learn through Spiritism. But the only fate that we all share, or the only destiny that we all have, is to be happy, folks. That's the only fate that we have. Flavio, I get it. I like that, but you say this because you're not part of my family. You say this because you don't know my uncle, my cousin, my brother, my father, my son. You don't know those people. So, what does Spiritism tell us about our family? Or about the people that are around us? As I portray in this picture, that's a happy family, correct? The father, in this case, portrayed as a business person, a businessman, always worry about time and the deals going, and all that. The woman's super tired about the activities, and sometimes, she's no longer, part of the family anymore. She's only looking for vacation. Look how happy the children are. So what does Spiritism tell us about family overall? So the message is very clear. Our family members are the very best spirits that can be with us at this particular time for us to continue progressing with our own spiritual journey. Oh, Flavio, what are you saying? What's going on there? It's very simple. These spirits that are there with us right now in our families are these spirits that we have a history, oftentimes a history from the past. Oftentimes we have to continue developing our relationships. We have to continue developing our own spiritual journeys with them in a way that they're there to help us, to help push us forward, and we are there also to help push them forward, so they can grow as well. Several examples that we can give, but one that's very very simple. Like if you're married and you have a spouse, a loved one, or a partner, every time you think too much of yourself or too much of ourselves, your spouse comes and says, "Honey, what are you trying to do? I know this is not you." So slash, right? My wife, whom I love to death, amazingly does that amazingly well. Meaning, don't be too proud. You're not, dude. You're not the best thing in the world after sliced bread. No, you're not, right? So let's keep it on. Let's keep it real here. So that spouse or that family member keeps us on track, keeps us really connected with our own, lives and all that. So another example, right? That can really help us be less selfish. When we're single, we can do whatever we want. We're single, we control our lives, and most often we can do whatever we please and so forth. But then we get married, and then the kids come and all that, and what happens? Then it's not only you anymore, it's you and your spouse. So it's 50%, 50%. Then kids come, it's like 25%, 25%, and 50%. Sometimes even less than that. That's a quest. That's an invitation for us to work on our selfishness. Meaning, we are here to serve. I love the quote. I don't know who it's from. I think it's one of those internet quotes. Folks that don't live to serve, don't serve to live. Meaning, we all have to serve in our lives. Serve within our families, serve within our communities, serve within our work, really serve others. That's the message that Christ left us as we know it. So, in the case of our families, same thing that applies when Jesus was here with us. He asked the question, who is my mother? Who is my father? Who is my so and so? Because the real family, folks, sometimes it's not blood related. The real family is those folks that we have the real sympathy and communion of ideas. That's what keeps spirits together before, during, and after incarnations. It's very simple to see that when sometimes people may love, a stranger more so than somebody that they share blood with. Correct? So what does that tell us? Spiritism is really here to give us, or to really change the sense of the purpose of our families. They are the vehicle, as I mentioned, that can really help us continue with our own, spiritual journey, but they're not always the real family that we have, because the real family is really made up with those individual spirits that have that sympathy, the communion of ideas. That's what keeps us connected, folks. That's what keeps us together as we know it. All right, so let's recap, because our time here is short. I'd love to be here with you until midnight, but I think I'm gonna there's other things that we need to do after this anyway. So let's recap. These are the 7 topics that I shared with you today. Meaning, God's not a punisher. God's a shepherd. God's always here by our side. God's not an old man with a cane. We know that. God is the supreme intelligence of the universe, the first cause of all things. That's the difference. That's the liberating message that we learn from Spiritism. And we should, understand God as such, in a way that He doesn't expect us to do things in the old way, some old traditions. Oh, God needs some penitence. I need to pay the promise. No, God doesn't need. God wants us to be happy, folks. That's what God wants. God gives us free will so we can live our lives, right, and continue progressing as we know it. Jesus, not a God. Jesus, as a spirit, He's our dearest brother. He's there for us all the time. We just got to invite Him to come to our house through Gospel at Home every week. We open a book, do prayer, magnetic water, and all those things. We invite Jesus to come to our house. He is our dearest brother, and we should treat Him as such. Not as a God, not to be worshipped, anything like that. Spiritism frees us from the idea that I should be a Spiritist to be happy. No. I should be a Spiritist to be saved. No. I should be a son. No. Charity is the vehicle. Doesn't matter what we call ourselves. Because guess what? When we wake up in the spiritual world, we're not going to be asked, hey, Flavio, excuse me, were you a Spiritist, a Catholic, a Protestant, a Muslim, an atheist? What were you when you were like? No. We're going to see, hey, what have you done for those siblings of yours that you lived with, your family members, people from your community, people that are on the verge of society, people that were suffering, the poor, the afflicted ones? What have you done to change their afflictions? What have you done to lessen that suffering? What have we done to really raise our hand and help those in need? That's the message, folks, that frees us from the concept of, I'm only going to help those who are like me. I'm only going to help those who believe the same ways that I believe. Or I'm only going to help those who sign the way I sign. No. Universe is our family, in a way that all of our siblings are every single one that gets in touch, that gets in contact with us. And that's what charity should mean to us. An opportunity, a vehicle for us to really achieve that. Equal rights for all spirits, meaning we should see ourselves as the same, folks. Nobody's special. I'm sorry to tell you that. I'm sorry to break the news, but you are not special. I'm not special. Nobody's special. God loves us all the same exact way. As a parent never loves one child more than the other, God does not love us more or less than the other. Flavio, does that mean that God loves everybody? Everybody. The angels and the criminals, yes, because the angels have already woken up. The criminals are still learning, but the journey they're gonna have to do is the same journey for all of us, which is spiritual evolution. Spiritism changes the perception of death. We should not be afraid of death. We should understand that's a journey, that we should really pay attention to the baggages or to the luggages they're going to carry with us, as I mentioned in Andrew Lewis's topic. We're all destined to be happy. That's the only destiny that we have on life, on earth. The only one. Everything else we're able to change, modify, advance, and so forth. And of course, the purpose of our families in a way that they are really the instruments that we have to really conduct our lives. And if we really want to conclude this in a way that, yes, there have been several liberation movements in human history. We've heard about the Black liberation, the Black Lives Matter. We've heard about women's liberation, gay folks' liberation, the Catholic theology of liberation. Those are the more recent ones. We know that. I would be daring enough to say that the Spiritism brings us a message that encompasses everything. That really encompasses how we connect with the universe, how spirituality should be implemented every single time. Because we are not Spiritists only when we go to the Spiritist Center. We are Spiritists every day, all the time, 24 hours a day. Meaning the way we treat others, the way we expect to be treated, the way we behave, the way that Christ taught us to do so. So imagine in a way that, or a place where most people are thinking about that already. Imagine a place, imagine a time where most spirits on earth are already with that mindset, are already with that, concept of liberation from their overall, shackles that kept us in the past. And this liberation, I would say, folks, is not accomplished by opposing battle. No, it's just the only battle is within ourselves. The only battle is within ourselves. Is to see ourselves today as a byproduct of the past, meaning today I'm better than yesterday, and tomorrow I'm hoping and I'm working hard to be better than I am today. So when the world is filled with individuals or spirits that think that way, and Spiritism is a great, vehicle, it's a great mechanism, we will see significant change in how we see everybody else, every single one of them. Because as Christ himself invited us, whoever desires to come after me, let him deny him or herself, take up his cross or difficulties and all that, and follow me. So that's the invitation, folks. But in order for us to free ourselves up from those shackles that prevent us from really following Jesus the way that he wanted us to follow him, we got to look beyond. We got to really understand these concepts, these 7 concepts that I planned for you today. I truly hope this has been a helpful conversation. I believe, I'm not sure if there's any Q&A, Leo, or not, but back to you, my friend.
Thank you, Flavio, for this amazing explanation, reminder. I'm also learning a lot of new things over here, too. It's always good to have these moments in which we bring all these concepts, right, that we see, we learn with Spiritism, but it comes as a refresher as well to emphasize how liberating this message can be, this science can be for all of us. And I'm truly happy to have this opportunity in this reincarnation to learn about Spiritism, to have these reminders, and to have people like you and many others, as you mentioned, who have come forth to emphasize the teachings that we learn from Allan Kardec. So thank you. and well put, well enlightening for all of us. We do have several comments, several questions here that we would like to share. As always, I always like to mention to everyone, say our hellos to everyone. I'm not gonna go through the hellos, the welcomes. There are too many, but rather to go into the actual questions and comments that we have here, so we can go and spend about 20 minutes or so into this other part of our interaction here. I would like to start with a question, I believe posed by Daniel. What would you say to someone that have no hope or does not see the world getting any better? Which is pretty often nowadays, right?
All right, so let's get some perspective here. I'm a big fan of data, in a way that, right, data is a good, a concrete anchor for us to really establish ourselves. A couple of things that I'll use to answer this question. Today, there's never been so many people volunteering for causes all over the world. Meaning, we are an all-time high number of volunteering hours from people all over the world committed to, doing good or doing really great things for their communities, their societies, their churches, whatever it is that they volunteer for. That's one indicator. Okay. Second indicator that I think it's really important for us to take into consideration. If you think the world's not getting better, let's go back to Allan Kardec's time. Meaning, he had no indoor plumbing, no air conditioning, no heating system. Dentists were a little tough. No anesthesia. That's only 107 years ago, folks. We've become much, much better than we were in the past. Our technological advances, look at this, right? We are talking to folks, I'm sure, all over the world that can follow us here. This was impossible 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So there has been so many technological advances. There has been so many advances, or really moral advances. The part that we're still lacking, in my personal opinion, is we got to talk more about it. Because the news that make the news are bad news. The news that don't make the news are the good news. And we should be the messengers of the good news. If somebody's doing something great, share that on your Facebook, on your Instagram, whatever it is that you decide. Talk to your friends. Share that, because otherwise, the great things that happen out there, nobody's going to know. Because when we turn on televisions, when we look at the news media, we see nothing but disasters, because that's what sells, folks. That's why it's important to connect ourselves with what's truly happening, and let's not be bent out of shape with those things that are making us believe that the world's getting worse, which in reality it is not. Those are just the mask around it. Does that help? I hope this was good. I don't know.
It does. Thank you. It's always good to emphasize the positive, and we have so much coming at us that and we just forget that we have all these means as well to share it. So thank you. Kirsten says, great reminders, Flavio. Seems like we live in a world that's always distracting us from stopping and being still and listening. Just a comment that she made. I don't know if you want to make a comment on, or otherwise I'll.
Kristen, I love you. Thanks for the comment.
And then Yasko goes on saying, great reminders in times of current struggles to despair due to COVID. How can we ease them and go through besides the concept of calamities being a way for evolution?
So Yasko, I would need another talk to answer this, but let me go maybe quickly, and hopefully it will make sense to you. Folks, let's put something into perspective. I just mentioned a few minutes ago that our families are the best vehicle for us to achieve our spiritual evolution. We learned that through Spiritism. What is COVID asking us to do? Spend more time with your family. Spend more time at home. But hang on a second. If my family is the best vehicle for me to achieve my moral evolution, I should spend a lot of time with my family, correct? Because that's going to help me. I need the help. But people see that with distorted ways. That's why you see, I think there's some comments about people are being single, and that's why you see higher, levels of divorce rates going on right now, and those things, and domestic violence, because these folks have not learned yet, you know. And by the way, this is not a critique on divorce by itself. No, it is not, because Spiritism per se is not against anything. It just gives us the tools to analyze, to critically analyze everything that happens to our lives. So back to COVID. If COVID is an invitation for us to spend more time at home, we should be thankful for COVID. That's giving us that opportunity. Okay, Flavio, but there's a lot of struggles with COVID. People losing their jobs. I get it. It's correct. It's true. And I think my heart goes for all those folks that have lost their jobs and have financial difficulties and all that. We get that. But oftentimes, events like this are followed by much more advancing in people's morals and all those things. Meaning, oftentimes we are asked to stop all these things that are happening with us. That's why there is in the Spirit's book, also in the Gospel, the law of destruction. Sometimes it's important for something to happen, to really shake things up, for us to look at things in a different way. To look at things, perhaps with our values would change a little bit. Perhaps, back to the Andrew Lewis's journey, perhaps we don't need that many suitcases for us to make that trip. Meaning suitcases as we're not going to use them afterwards. Suitcases that have material things in them because we're not going to need them as when we pass. So Spiritism frees us. It's a message of liberation from those things that, yes, material things are important. Yes, they are. But the real important ones are the spiritual things. And the treasures that, they're not going to be eaten by a bug or they're not going to be stolen by a thief, but the treasures that we can keep in that journey. So I hope that made sense, Jasko. And I'll finalize by saying this. Yes, COVID is there. We got to do everything we're asked to do that our legal institutions, our government, all that is asking us to do. But we should never lose faith that God is in control. And if we do our parts might be as simple as we learned from the authorities, wear a mask, practice social distance, limit, our vacations and stuff like that, spend more time at home, wash our hands. That's nothing bad there. We have to trust, folks, that there is supreme intelligence is in control. We should not freak out. That's the message.
Thank you, Flavio. Just another comment here by Kirsten. Really a question and asking for suggestions. Any suggestions as to what to do when you feel so defeated you don't feel like you can be still and listen to God?
All right, let me say this. Any suggestions as to what to do when you feel so defeated you don't feel like you can be still and listen to God? So, folks, life sometimes is a roller coaster, right? We know that. That's the quote that I shared with you before. We know that. But rest assured, we're never alone. And that's the beauty of the message. Because even though we're still at the driver's seat, we have people there that are making sure, Flavio, don't sleep. You gotta keep driving. Flavio, don't do this. Don't go over the speed limit. Pay attention, the guy's braking in front of you. Or pay attention, this truck here is passing you by the right. These are our guardian angels talking to us, inspiring us for us to listen. However, the quest upon us is to really listen to them. And what worked for me, I'll share my trick. What worked for me is, of course, I pray multiple times a day. My favorite time of praying, by the way, I'll share that. It's in the shower. Because what else can you do when you're showering? I'm a lousy singer. You can't bring your phone to the shower, right? People do, but that's beyond the point. You're not supposed to do that, right? What can you do? My case, I just pray, right? So after praying, you stop all the invitations, all distractions of the world, and meditate, folks. A minute, 2 minutes a day, that's enough. Sometimes 5 minutes. Just stop whatever you're doing, focus. There's an app, there's apps that can help you with that. You can, whatever. There's several ways to do that. Every time we do that, we are training ourselves to listen to those reflections, to listen to those intuitions. And we can't avoid to feel defeated sometimes. We cannot avoid to feel, oh, people are betraying me, or I'm passed on by somebody's promotion, or that girl that I loved in high school, picked another boy today, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what happens. What matters is how we react to that. Because life is going to throw us a lot of things. There's a saying that goes, when life throws you lemons, you make a lemonade. When life throws you, these defeating invitations, you have to twist things around. Remember that everything is under control. Everything is under control as long as we're doing our parts. Meaning, if you're passed on for that promotion, are you studying hard? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you developing yourself? Are you learning new skills and all that? If you're passed on by that date with that cute guy in high school, are you taking care of yourself? Are you doing something to really showcase how smart, how brilliant, how beautiful you are to that small things, guys, right? Small things, but sometimes we forgot those things.
Thank you, Flavio. Another question here from Kirsten. The concept of fate has always been fascinating to me. What about when people talk about, I was destined to get this job, or I was destined to meet this person? But in reality, when is it a choice versus when it is fate?
Well, that
Is it
requires another talk, maybe sometime later.
all the great questions towards you now, man?
So the only time when there's fate, as we learned through Spiritism, is when that happens before incarnation. For example, there's several stories from Andrea Lewis, Memoirs of a Suicide, which is an amazing book, highly recommend. There's several stories where sometimes somebody is born with a defect or is disabled. That has a reason for that. As we learn from Spiritism, there are current and past reasons for our afflictions. That's the only time that fate has a role in it. And so much so that fate in this incarnation, because before we incarnate, we're oftentimes making these plans. Hey, I'm going to be born this way, so I'm no longer able to do this, or I'm no longer able to do that. That should be the only time where we use the word fate in our lives. When people say, "Oh, I was destined to get this job," no, you're not. You plan for it. You prepare yourself. You study it. You really put a plan in place. You worked on it. That's your. Because guess what? If everything was fate, what's the credit? What about my credit? What about my recognition for studying hard, for preparing myself, spending hours and hours? Right? All of our credits will go down to the drain if fate was there. So we Spiritists don't see fate like that. We see that, yes, there's a plan, and when our lives are being planned, there's a skeleton for our lives. We're still able to make that body any way we want it, but the skeleton is there. It's up on us to really drive and really build on it. So don't fall for that rhetoric that people say, "Oh, it's fate. I met that person," or "It's fate, so and so." Just to recap, Emmanuel has a quote that talks about the only time, which is very rare, the only time there's a fate between you meeting that particular individual is for whenever that couple is building great things for humanity. Meaning, when Allan Kardec and Emily Baudet is a great example. There are other examples out there where the couple really met, and because of that meeting, because of that joint effort, they were really able to build great things for society, for humankind. Other than that, meaning all of us folks here, that there's no fate. We ended up meeting people because guess what? We are connected by our affinity. We're connected by the things that we like in common. We are sort of, again, in this sympathy or empathy. The connection is there. That's why we connect with people that we like. That's why we connect and so forth. And if I can wrap it up, I think there was a question about how can we explain so many folks are being single right now? I think there's a question. I saw that floating.
Yeah,
The
yes,
thing there.
that was going to be the next question. I think
Yeah.
this goes back to what you were touching in terms of family, how important family is. And Paula asked, as family life is for progress, how do you understand the increase of people living as singles?
So let me give a couple of examples. Divaldo, even though he was single, he had one partner, Uncle Nilsson, that was there with him every step of the way. That was a marriage, right? There was a person there was a partnership that was there with him every step of the way. Same thing with Chico and other folks throughout his life. Some folks disconnected before and all that. Same very thing happened. So that's one. I think that question came there as well. So why people are a lot of people are single today? Again, Spiritism is not against anything. It just gives us the ammunition to understand and make better decisions for ourselves. So we're not against the divorce. By all means, we're not. But I'm going to answer that with a quote by Joanna DeAngelis. She says, "You're ready for a divorce when you can tell yourself, I have done every single little thing within my power to really save this relationship. I understand and acknowledge that did not happen by accident. I have a history with that spirit. So the moment you can say that, you've worked hard, you put the time, the effort, the dedication, the therapy, the counseling, the discussions, the conversations, and all those things. The moment you've done all these things, and you are sure you've done them all, then you may say, you know what? I think I tried my best, and things are not working out. Then you should really look for that. Otherwise, right? Think of the opportunity that we have with those individuals. Think of the opportunity that we have, that we've agreed upon to spend time with those folks. And people don't get divorced by the wrong reasons. I think the more important question would have been, why are people getting married? What's the reason for getting married? Because people usually get married for the wrong reasons. Oh, because it's so beautiful, so handsome, so this is rich, has a great job, has a great house. Oh, he's so articulate, so and so. Those folks are the wrong reasons to get married. You should get married when you look and you find somebody that's going to be a partner to you, that's going to be there with you every step of the way. Excuse me. That individual might not have all the qualities that you were looking for, or you asking for, but that's the person you should look for. Because when you get married for the wrong reasons, you ended up getting divorced for the right reasons. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's a history with that individual. As we learned from Spiritism, there's a connection there. So, and if you have kids, even more so, because the kids are going to connect you with that person forever. There's really I'm not going to remove so and so from my life forever. No, you're not. But anyways, that's another topic for another lecture, because there's a lot of content for marriage and divorce. We'll be happy to come back and spend more time with you folks on it.
And we will take that note, yes, to come back. We do have time for one more, Flav, if you're okay with it. And then what I would like to ask you, perhaps, is that after you answer this, that you say our final prayer as well. And I'll say right after the prayer, we'll disconnect here. But there beyond what Alba is about to ask and that I'll present here, there are some other questions. We ask you to please hang in there. We'll take the notes of your question, and then we'll send it to you. There are actually a few more questions after Alba, but because of time, we won't be able to answer them all. But this is what Alba asked, and once more, I'm going to ask you to answer it, and then just going straight to the prayer so we can finalize this evening. Like you said, there are many other things that we got to do. We wish you could stay here until midnight, but this is what she asked. What a pleasure having you, Flavio, with us at the SSB. How would you respond to someone who would ask you who asks you what is to be a spiritist, like an elevator speech? In a few minutes, what would you highlight?
Okay, so that's that. If somebody asks you, "Are you a spiritist?" What is that? That's what I got from Alpa's question. Okay,
Yeah.
so to me, again, this is how I would answer this. To me, it's saying, yes, Spiritism is a progressive body of knowledge that leverages Christ's teachings as our moral philosophy. It's also a experimental science that's based upon evidence of life after death, of mediumship, and all that. But ultimately, it's a moral code for me to be a better person today than I was yesterday. It's for me to really look at myself as an immortal spirit, that I'm on this journey, and this life is only one chapter of my entire Netflix series, what Flavio's life is really, right? So that's how I see it. 30 seconds. Again, hopefully that made sense, Alba, but that's pretty much what I would answer. It's not anything beyond that. That's pretty much it. So with that, Leo, I want you to thank you, my beloved host, for really intertwining all these questions and making all the technology work behind us. So thank you for that. Thank you for those folks who have asked questions. It's always a pleasure to engage and to really collaborate. Every time I answer one of these questions, I learn more from where you're coming from and all that with those questions. For those of you who are going to be watching us recorded, thank you for your time. So let us close our eyes if you're comfortable in doing that. Let us raise our thoughts to our dear brother Jesus, our professor, our GPS, our model and guide. First, in gratitude for this opportunity that we have to spend time with dear friends, with like-minded individuals that are trying to do better for themselves, that are trying to become better spirits, better parents, better children, better brothers, better siblings, better employers, better employees in their communities. May we, Jesus, always have the ability to listen to your signals. May we, Jesus, have always be aware of all the intuition, all of the guardian angels are trying to tell us. I know it's hard sometimes because of our daily lives, but we ask you to stay with us. And we'd also like to ask you to take this prayer to our heavenly God, to our heavenly Mother and Father God, for all the blessings we have received, for all the teachings, all the love, all the care from our family members, from our spouses, from our children, from our communities, from where we are right now. So we thank you, our dear Lord, for all those. But we also thank you for all of our difficulties, for all of our obstacles, for all of our problems, all of our afflictions, that their jobs oftentimes is to make us better, more resilient, more connected with you, understanding that we are in this life to become better, to do good to others, to be charitable, to be Christ-like. So we thank you for that, our dear Lord. And may your peace be with us now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, everyone, and until next time. Thank you, Flavio. Good night.